What's up, guys? Welcome back to Dad Awesome. My name is Jeff Zog. This is episode 198, and today my guest, Seth Barnes. This is a do not hit pause, do not hit stop, do not park and go into your place of employment. Do not finish the yard project that you're doing while you're listening. This is so packed with wisdom, so packed with I can apply these principles to my journey as a dad. So pumped for you guys. Hey, we are just 4 or 5 days out from November 9th. November 9th is the episode 200 party. Even though today is episode 198, we're hosting the party a little bit before episode 200 drops. And in Minneapolis, Minnesota, if you guys are around, join us. I'm wearing the t-shirt. So on YouTube, we've got a video of this episode. I'm wearing the new Dad Awesome t-shirt. That's a gift to anyone who shows up to the Dad Awesome episode 200 party on November 9th. In the show notes is how you register for that. Also, some fun news. I will be bringing these t-shirts with me on a RV road trip. So the Zog family, my family, we just today, actually, as I'm recording this, purchased an RV, and we are going to be going around the country hosting meetups, Dad Awesome meetups at Chick-fil-A locations, around campfires, in various locations, and we're also going to host rides, so opportunities to come out and ride with other dads, and really we're taking the mission that God put on our heart, and we're going as a family. Instead of being a dad who flies away from his family to go do fatherhood ministry, I really, the prayer has been, God, could we be a family who as a family expands the vision, mission, the calling you have for Dad Awesome and Fathers for the Fatherless. So as of today, that miracle, it happened. We bought an RV, and we are about to take off on an adventure. So more to come on that, and there'll be an opportunity actually to find out. Lincoln, Nebraska, Denver, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, San Diego, Austin, Texas, Dallas, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to be in a lot of places hosting these meetups. And so if you're not in Minnesota, you can still get a hold of one of these t-shirts if you show up at one of those Dad Awesome meetups. All right, Seth Barnes, he founded Adventures in Missions, the world race. Over 130,000 young adults have given themselves to following God's call in ministry, in missions, learning about letting their hearts be broken for what breaks God's heart as they've traveled around the world and been exposed to what God's up to in the ministry and the hurt. So he brings such high levels of passion when it comes to, he's written books on hearing God's voice. He's written books on, and so many blog posts on being an intentional dad, on chasing the call to missions. And we're going to link all of his resources. There are so many blog posts. You guys, I had so much fun preparing for this interview. This is Seth Barnes. This is episode 198 of Dad Awesome. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you for this time. I really appreciate it.
It's a privilege, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Well, I wanted to start with you jumping back to when you were 9 years old. So 9 years old, your dad, I believe, he was serving our country, went away. Would you talk about the story of not being in proximity to your dad, and even just what that year was like?
It was a hard year. My dad was in the Army, and the Vietnam War was underway. He's a doctor, and they called him up just in time for the Tet Offensive, which is like the peak of the offensive push by the North Vietnamese. And so every day you're wondering if he's going to come back. Every day you're wondering, is this gap that I've got going to be a permanent gap? And fortunately, he did come back, and it marked him and it marked us, because my mom embraced Jesus. That was a miraculous thing, and it became something that she was eager to share with me as a 9-year-old. And I was desperate. I knew I needed help, and I knew that if there was a savior, I needed him. So that was kind of an early start for me on my faith walk. But when my dad did come back, there was a lot of stuff to unwind from the war, and that took some time too. But it alerted me to the fact that having a dad is a precious thing, and those that don't have dads, and there's so many these days, are just missing one of life's greatest gifts.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about my daughter turning 8 this year, just this idea of this phase of dad life.
Yeah.
just being distant, being apart, and then of course all of the heartache and what you would carry back from, I just cannot even imagine. Fast forward, now you are known by your grandkids as Papa Daddy. Is that correct?
That's right. 4 syllables. Yeah.
How many
It's a lot to
grandkids
say.
now? How many
We
grandkids do
have,
you have?
yeah, we have 7. So there's 5 children and 7 grandchildren. And we're hoping for more. I think, we have
Yes.
margin for a lot more, but I love, playing with them. The oldest is, now I forget, 7 or 8. And they go all the way down to just 1 year old. And the older ones just are roughhousers and are looking to wrestle, looking to chase, looking to, just engage body, soul, and spirit every time they see me. So that's a lot of fun because, you want proof that you're not irrelevant at my age.
Well, and I know even the name you prayed over, and I believe your wife Karen, her name Nana. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, Nona. Yeah, Nona,
Nona,
which
thank you. So Nona
right.
and Papa Daddy.
Yeah.
But would you talk a little bit about why you chose the name Papa Daddy and even the significance around what you hope with that you would be as far as a presence in your grandkids' life?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was actually chosen for me. I didn't choose the
Okay.
name Papa Daddy. The kids kind of came up with it. And I don't know if they were helped by their parents or what, but for me, it symbolizes a softer father. And not that I wasn't a soft, accessible father. I was often a very busy father, for the kids growing up. And I'm not as busy now, I have more space. And I just want to be very approachable. And in general, you're not just, there's potential to be a father physically, you have your own kids, but also their spiritual children. And they need that softness too. So I do aspire to having a more of a soft side. I'm a driver. I see things. I'm a visionary, and there's always that, but you have to tone it down and just kind of be available to wrestle and dance with your kids when they want it.
Yeah, you sent me that
With
video
your
clip.
grandkids. I'm
Grandkids.
speaking of my grandkids. Right? Yeah.
Well, when we were just talking about though, you sent me a video clip from I think 1988 of
Right.
you towing
Yeah.
around your kids on a branch from a palm tree, and there was like 3 or 4 of them on the branch. You were towing them around
Yeah.
the yard, and on the YouTube clip, maybe I'll even insert that little clip so that our guys watching can see. But the playfulness, I think there's both sides though. There's the softness. Some of us need to soften up. We're too much. We're
Mm-hmm.
drivers, and then there's the
Mm-hmm.
flip side. Some of us, maybe we need to be more driven and more like, hey,
Right.
let's take ground. Let's not coast in the season. Would you talk a little bit about both sides and maybe that continuum?
Yeah. What a great question and issue, because we are all very, very different and we are on some kind of a continuum. I think self-awareness is the first thing. Like get feedback. How am I on this continuum? Do I actually leave margin, and am I approachable? And am I too much of a driver? And or do I need to be more spontaneous? And what is it that I can lean into that's hard for me? So for me, as a driver, I just always wanted to lean into accessibility and playing and innovation. Not just at work, but also on the playground. So yeah, that palm branch, it looked like just something I'd have to throw away, or it could be this magical ride that they could jump on and pretend that it's a horse or something. And that's, I always tried to approach the playtime that way. Inventing games, not just like pulling down a box and opening it and letting somebody else set the rules.
Yes. Oh, that's so fun. And then how about the flip side though? When it comes to challenging us dads to actually take ground and not like miss like the driver's side, which could even
Yeah.
be, hey, get a mission beyond your family. Go do something. And this ties me back
Yeah.
to maybe asking about Isaiah 58 about comfort versus mission. And so maybe can you go into that side a little bit further?
Yeah, I mean, so my day job was to run this ministry, and so it just became natural for me to take them along on mission. And we lived in West Palm Beach initially, and I would take them down to a place called Belle Glade, Florida, which is maybe half an hour away, and it's right in the sugarcane fields and a large Haitian population, one of the poorest places, highest at that time AIDS infection rate in America. What an opportunity for them to just see that they're not the center of the world. I think, I look at a lot of young people coming up and they're so entitled. They're so soft, such victims. They need to be challenged. Like, yeah, we as dads, as they get older, we need to challenge them more. So it's great to be soft when they're 0 to 5, and they need boundaries, of course, but you got to start challenging them. And people ask me, when can I take my child on mission? Well, I used to take them at age 4 and 5 on mission. And that really tones down the entitlement, which is a huge issue these days for dads.
Yeah, the choosing, and part could be getting on a plane and going on mission, or going to a different part of the city you live in and going on mission. But
Yeah.
also there's even smaller choices of, I want to move my kids towards risk, or I want to move them towards the potential of fail, or get hurt to a level so that they learn. And another great post, and by the way, diving into for several hours last night and this morning, your blog. I mean, because you wrote every day for, I think you're 17 years into your blog. Is that approximately right?
17 years now. It's a long time.
But the percentage of those posts though on dad life, fathering, and then of course, because you have 4 daughters, I'm just like, yes, I'm in the 4-daughter camp, and then your son as well. But
yeah.
So I'm going to link in the show notes so that our listeners can actually hop into probably 10 to 15 of those posts, because they're nuggets, they're short reads, but so helpful. Thank you for your heart and your passion for intentional fatherhood, and we're just going to leverage and share.
I made the mistakes. I don't want you to have to make them too. If I can share them and you can avoid them, that'd be great.
But go a little bit. One of those was about the choosing pain, or choosing risk, or choosing, I'm not going to protect all the way through because it's bad for my kids to play protecting dad. Would you talk a little bit about intentionality on that side?
Yeah, so many. I was at a dinner on Monday, so 2 nights ago, and the one guy was talking about a community just outside of Atlanta, near our airport. And in that school of, I don't know, maybe 600, there were no whole families. They were all like single parents. Just these, like a neutron bomb had been dropped on these families. So you get all these single parents that are having to be both mom and dad. Traditionally, you've had fathers that provided boundaries and provided challenge, and said, let's go and let's get your first job. Let's figure out how to do the next step. That was the dad traditionally did that, and the moms traditionally provided more of a safe landing zone, and good meals and whatever. So we don't have that traditional family, but what we need is still those roles. We need boundaries, and we need challenge, and we need love and acceptance, and all this is righteous. But usually it's, in some of these urban areas, it's just one parent doing it. And boy, if you're a dad and maybe you're in a divorce situation, what is that poor mom having to do? How do you lean back into that? I don't know that I've got answers for that, but if you do have 2 parents in a household, somebody needs to be challenging those kids. Somebody needs to be taking them out of entitlement, out of a self-focus, out of this place of just kind of they get to Yale and they're called snowflakes. We've got to stop this as a nation, or we're just not going to have a generation to hand any kind of inheritance to. And so, dads need to be thinking imaginatively about the future. Like, where is my child needing to embrace pain? There's other people's pain. There's their own pain. How do we learn? We learn through pain. You think about, we learn to walk by falling down. We learn to ride a bike by falling down. We learn to go to school where we don't have friends, by feeling, lonely and will I make it? So this is how we grow. And at some point, parents got to get out of the way, and they've got to be more of a challenger and less of this kind of place to retreat to.
And I know that it ties in with knowing the phase that you're currently in. And you sent me this before we chatted. Yes. You're like, hey, you called out these 3 phases, and I'll give a high level flyover and let you go into. But there's the 0 to 5. Your kids are 0 through 5 years old, identity formation. Then ages 6 through 12, body, soul, and spirit formation. And then the third one was age 13 through 18, connecting to the world of adults. Would you go a little deeper into what you mean by those 3 phases?
Well, there's, you can go to Piaget and cognitive development. There's 4 stages, and they'll talk about, up to age 2, you're just learning motor skills. You're just learning to kind of navigate the outside world. Then there's language development at the next stage. And after that, there's concrete thought, and then abstract thought, which is more in your adolescence. But what about your spirit? What about the elements of your child that need to be developed that are not as obvious? And certainly identity. Psychologists will tell you, 0 to 5 is when you establish the fact that you're okay. Like there's no abuse. There's no sense of it's not safe. And really, as a child, you're a son, a daughter that's got a place and is always safe in that place in the family. So that's huge, because if you're in an insecure place, so many people deal from insecurity, and all the stuff that you see these billionaires do comes from that 0 to 5 stage where they did not get what they needed, and they're still trying to fill that gap.
Yeah.
But what happens, when they move beyond that to a place where you're developing their whole person? Well, recognize that there is physically, man, we're an overweight nation. We need more exercise.
Yeah.
And in terms of soul, we used to read books. Who's reading books anymore? Let's challenge people that way. And in spirit, golly, dads, we need to be praying. At one point, I learned that God wants to talk, and I had been monologuing with him all my life, and I learned that he would actually, this thing called listening prayer. If I ask him a question, he'll speak to me. And I wanted to teach my kids that, and it couldn't just happen in a 5-minute thing before school. And we'd sit down for 45 minutes and just, I teach them to pray. I'd read in the Bible. We'd study it together, and that's how their spiritual formation happened. And then as they become, adults in their adolescence, you just want to be not just a friend, but you want to be their cheerleader. You want to be the person that not only challenges them, but is there to help them to grow in all of their different ways as they connect with the adult world. So it's a lot. And but I think what happens is we're not aware. The shifts are subtle, and we don't recognize that we've gone into a new season. I've had moms at age 24, their kid is going with us in the world race, and they're giving me all the reasons why they shouldn't do it. And and the kid goes through, and it's the best thing they've ever had in their life. And then maybe they meet their their future mate, and their lives are transformed. I'm telling you, like it's huge. And the mom just couldn't take the risk. All they could see was the downside. And we've got to lean into the future if we're ever going to raise greatness in our kids.
Well, at the time of recording this, tomorrow, Pastor John Tyson in New York, his episode drops tomorrow. Again, this will be a month ago by the time this episode drops, but his capstone of the third phase, the 13 through 18, his primal path, the capstone was the world race for his son.
Oh, wow.
And the journey of that adventure and serving others, and his heart to be, he calls it irrevocably broken for the needs of the hurting and oppressed. And Pastor John Tyson is passionate, but it's cool
I'm
timing.
going to be listening. I'm going to be listening to that one. I'm sold out to that theme. Yeah, it's great.
Well, but it's choosing discomfort, choosing risk, choosing I can't control by a parent letting their 17, 18, 19-year-old. I mean, you're choosing, whoa, wait a second, especially today when there's even more fears than ever with travel. So I'm just so thankful. And I know that it has changed your parenting trajectory, where it's not just you're thinking about your 5 kids and their future spouses, which I've loved some of your writing around preparing for them to meet their spouse. But you've actually you've pulled in and said these young men and young women, I want to help gift them some counsel as well, because they've been seeking that. They finish this experience and it's like, what's next for me? What are some of the, if you around a campfire with some of these specifically young men, what are you finding yourself sharing in terms of, man, this is as you walk into your 20s and you start thinking about like fatherhood is coming, what words of like, this is what you've got to add extra focus to?
What a great time for you to ask that question. I feel like you just set me up for a spike there, because I'm taking my one son and my 3 son-in-laws to we're going to go zip lining and maybe whitewater rafting and mountain biking this weekend. Cool. And we're going to get that fire, and we're going to get just kind of raw conversations. My challenge is going to be to not be directive and to not be the guy with all the answers. Like, here I am, I'm set up to, and people are listening, and I've got some kind of expertise. Well, I've just made a lot of mistakes, but I got to only be available for like their questions, and my answers need to be way toned down so that there's space for them to, be their own man. And But I tell you what, I'm leaning into that. I don't need to go mountain biking. I kind of worry I'm going to break my ankle or something. But I do need to be available to these. They've got challenges, and they need to know I'm on their side. So I think leaning in would be my advice. And one thing I found that's amazing is you can take a Delta flight to Guatemala for 13,000 Delta miles. So I piled up a few miles, and I'm going to fly my whole family, grandkids, everybody to Guatemala. We're going to do fun and missions. And I'm just trying to bait the hook and get everybody to see that there is a bigger picture by exposure. And I think that would be kind of my main advice, is to recognize there's like 4 levels of covenantal relationship that begins with you and God. There's the self. Like, if that's not solid, you can't really raise a good family. But that's the next level, is the good family. And if that can be solid, then maybe you can develop a good community. And if that community is solid, maybe you can impact the world. So let's not in any way diminish the importance of being solid in identity or the family. But at some point, if you're just having a cookout every Saturday, that's not enough. You've got to recognize true religion. James 1:27 says, is widows and orphans in their distress. Let's go take care of them. Let's go and recognize that we're not the center of the universe.
Yeah. So the first one that you just mentioned is a relationship with God. It's your identity as a son of God. And I think about dads that have never heard God's voice. And I know this for you, I believe it was 31 years old is a challenge.
Yeah, I'm so old. I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
That was a few years ago, but I think you had all 5 of your kids at that time,
yes.
if I remember correctly. And the invitation, it's very similar to what I've been praying with my daughters recently, with expectancy that they're going to hear a response. But you asked a very simple question to God. You said, what do you think of me? Did I get that right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What do you say back? What do you say back?
You're a good interviewer, I got to say, Jeff, because you really went down into and that was like the pivotal moment in my life. Maybe there's when I asked my wife to marry me, but I asked that question, and I was in a broken place. Our marriage wasn't the best at the time. We were at a marriage retreat, and I needed to hear God. I was desperate, and God spoke to me in a voice that it was just incontrovertible. It was Him. And he said, I love you, Seth. And I just wept. I was, just a puddle of tears, because this is what I'd been waiting all my life to hear, but didn't know that that it was even available. And it made all the difference. After that, I'm like, okay, everybody needs to know this God. It became the good news that we talk about, because to that point, it'd been just about Bible study. Now I had a relationship.
So that was an example of a very simple question that you were coached by someone led that moment and coached and said, just ask a simple question, see what he says.
Right.
Would you add just a little bit of coaching for all of us dads, for ourselves, but also this is simple ways we can invite our kids to ask, to lean into hearing God's voice?
Well, you have to make a space. And I would make, for me, morning was the best time. And I know morning's hectic. So it means, don't go to bed as late as you do, and get up a little earlier. And I get all 5 of them, and we get on our knees on the couch, and we talk to God. And I don't know, I would just ask questions, and I was present, and I was intentional. So I think you've got to find a way to carve out that space. And if you have that space, if you need curriculum or just some prompts, there's a book I wrote called The Art of Listening Prayer. I don't get any money from. I just love to help dads. So if anybody wants that, they can get it through Amazon, or I'd send them to them digitally if they want to get it that way. But get some prompts and start just pressing into new space that maybe is uncomfortable, where God has the opportunity to make it more of a dialogue, less of a monologue.
Yeah. So strongly want to encourage that as well. And I know another area, you say you're going to lean in with your kids on this adventure zipline trip. You're going to lean in, but not try to be too overbearing with directing.
Yeah.
I know another area you leaned in is an area that's tender for me, because it's a leaning into a relationship with my dad. You and your father. You leaned in, hoping for blessing,
Mm,
hoping for blessing,
mm,
and somewhat that prayer is answered, and somewhat God made up the
yeah,
difference. But would you talk about that season of leaning in and pursuing some healing in that relationship?
sure. Well, it was hard because my dad, military man, a doctor, a very decisive guy, president of his class at Yale, not a guy that really thought a lot about kids. And so we were, he did a lot of things right, but there were some things that it took a long time for me to get over. And I never really did feel like I was a buddy. At 31, he said, let's go on a week-long trip. And we went to Costa Rica, and that was amazing. And so there's a little idea, if you haven't really connected, or, you've got some ground to make up, do something extravagant like that. And that might be a thing. But for me, I think we really connected in an unexpected way, in a way that was so hard. So one of the hardest things I've ever done was to help him to die. He died 2 years ago, and I was his caregiver. And I would go and just show up because he'd become paralyzed below the waist, and he couldn't get around, and there was nobody to visit him. So if I didn't visit him, he'd have nobody that day. So I had to visit him. And but he's not a conversationalist, and so sometimes the best thing that we had to do was me holding his hand and just praying with him, because that was the one time that he could be honest. I remember towards the end, I had to go to India, and I knew that this might be the last time that I would see him. And I said to him, Dad, I've got to go to India. I had read scripture. I'd read Matthew 9 to him, and I said, the prayer that Jesus asked his disciples to pray is to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers. That's what I'm doing. It's what you want me to do. It's what you raised me to do. And I'm so thankful you're my dad. And I'm so thankful for you. And I just want you to know I love you. And there's just I may not see you again. I said all this stuff that was hard to say, but I needed to say. And you know what? At the end, he didn't have any answer. He just sat there. I'm like, oh. So I turned to go away, and I came back and I said, Dad, let me just pray with you. And I held his hand, and you know what? He reached up with his other hand, and with both his hands, he cupped my hand and just rubbed his thumb on my thumb, and he prayed to God. And it was like that second effort of going deeper that allowed him to reach down into his heart and to say, he said, Seth, this is such a hard time for me. I'm so thankful that you have shown up. And he said he loved me. And then another time he said that I was his best friend. So talk about redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't according to any script that I would have made, but it was everything that I needed it to be before he died.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. 2 years ago, my dad went home to heaven, and
Oh, wow.
I actually, in the moments of care, it was a lot of prayer, a lot of me playing the guitar next to his
Yeah.
bed. But I asked him to pray a prayer of blessing over me. And I
Yes.
actually coached him on how to pray the prayer of
Oh,
blessing
that's so good,
over
Jeff.
me.
That's really, really good. Yeah.
Such a gift, such a
Yes.
hard, painful gift. And I had 100 weeks. He got sick the day after episode 1 of this podcast released. He rushed the hospital, and he went home to heaven the day after episode 100 released. So
Wow.
I had 100 weeks with him. But
That's so good.
he prayed a prayer of double blessing, a blessing prayer for specifically, he blessed me in the area of double. I affirmed him and his wisdom. I was like, Dad,
Mm-hmm.
you're a wise dad. Would you pray for a double portion of that over me? And he did.
Oh,
And
that's
it was
great. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
such a gift, but something about choosing, even though there's pain for many of us
Yeah.
who are dads. I'm 39. There's pain. Pain can separate us from our earthly father, or pain, we
Right.
can choose to press through it. Just like you said, pain is
Right.
good, right? Pain is good. We can
Yeah.
choose to press in, and the gift and the blessing of choosing to press in versus be hardened and calloused. Would you go even a little step deeper into why pursuing those
Absolutely.
tough times are good?
Yeah. Yeah. So good what you did, Jeff. And often as fathers, we want to bless, we want to say those words, but we just don't know how. We don't have the words. So what do? I mean, I wrote a blog a while back on blessing your kids, and I gave people, here's an example of a blessing. I said I would actually send you my blessing written out if you were to email me. And I had so many dads email me and say, would you send me this blessing? And I think that's a righteous thing. And I remember gathering all of my friends and my kids' friends and the dads especially, and having them join us in intentionally praying this prayer of blessing and consecration over my kids. And so that's something I think everybody, let me just challenge everybody here. If you haven't blessed your kids in a way that, if I were to ask your child, have you been blessed by your dad? And they would say, oh, definitely. If they can't answer that, then go ahead and do it again. It's the most precious gift that you can give. I mean, and blessing isn't just a one-time thing, it's an ongoing thing. But yeah, is that going to be hard? It might be, depending on levels of unforgiveness or awkwardness that might be there. But let me just tell you, when you get to heaven, what I understand is it's Jesus that's waiting, and it's your family that's waiting. So your dad is like going to be waiting, and there's not going to be this level of awkwardness there. So just get over yourself. Have some courage. I mean, vulnerability and courage are flip sides of the same coin. So just press into the stuff that's hard and do it. And if anybody needs to email me, I'll walk you through it. I got nothing better to do than to help you get to a place of reconciliation with those that are closest.
It's for sure. I'm going to email you, and I'm going to get it for our show notes. The guys can have those words of blessings, but they go beyond just blessing our kids. And I mentioned blessing my dad, receiving some of his blessing, but also blessing if you're married. If you're a dad listening, you're married. Would you talk about that side as well, of blessing in front of our kids? Bless our wife.
Boy, there's two ways of blessing. One is with your actions, another is with your words. And if your actions don't match your words, then that's going to just look like hypocrisy. So, don't do it for show. Do a gut check first, and maybe get, some self-awareness around how you're doing, because you need to bless her. I try and bless my wife with coffee every day. And, that's just a tangible little blessing that I can give. And I try and bless her with a conversation and ask her how she's doing. But also, women need to know that you love them still. The joke about, well, I told you the one time that I love you, why should I ever have to, a lot of guys are that way. And we just need to recognize it's not enough. And somehow, and I'll raise my hand, I need this coaching all the time, because I'm not a natural words of affection kind of guy. Women need them, and it's a blessing, but it's also just a felt need that they've got. There's a book I'll recommend. It's called it's by John O'Donohue, and it's called "To Bless the Space Between Us." And I recommend anybody that's interested in this subject of blessing, get the book. It's about 120 or so beautiful blessings for all kinds of occasions. Because as men, we need to be blessing all kinds of people in our lives. There's all kinds of ways that we have strength that other people need, and we impart it with our words and with our actions. And often that's called a blessing.
Seth, I'm very thankful for this conversation. I'm positive that it will be the first of many future conversations, and having you back, because I had 15 pages of notes to talk.
You're amazing.
I did.
You are amazing, Jeff.
Well, the deep dive is important to me, and I know that there is something about a journey, and something about that you've even taken so many on journeys together, saying, "Hey, we're gonna go the distance together." Friendships are formed, deeper places in our hearts, and I know that you are at the core of what you're doing. Freedom is a core passion of yours, is to see, and again, 130,000 young adults have gone on mission trips because of your leadership, what you've started. You're starting, again, like as our mutual friend, Troy says, he's like, I want to spark fires in people, but freedom. I'd love for you to end with any words around of encouragement and challenge to be dads who are not only living free, but are setting a pathway up for our kids to live in freedom.
Sure. Well, let's talk about liminal space. So liminal space is space in between thought and action. And so you got to have some thought, and you've got to meditate on, the implications. So I would, carve out a half a day, or at least an hour or 2 hours, just to think about, am I living at my potential? And I just want to say, there's greatness in you. There's amazing potential in you that you probably have not tapped, and that God wants to tap. And he often uses our weaknesses, and that's where we're, his strength, it shines through our weaknesses. So if there's any greatness in me, it's because I have shown up with weakness so much. I've been desperate. And I just want to encourage you to find some time to ask God, how could I get over or out of this place of kind of lockdown, Like we've been in this lockdown and we're not seeing friends or family, or we're not challenged in the way that we know we need to be. And it's time to get out of it. And I'm not talking about COVID right now. I'm talking about a mentality that maybe has been precipitated by this virus. But we ourselves should not be living in fear. We are more than conquerors, the word says. And many of us don't live that way. So I challenge you, this is something people are going to hear. Maybe they watch the video, they don't know me. I have lived in so many places where I have lacked freedom for too long. And I just am celebrating the fact that life is full and abundant and I get to live it and take risks. I mean, I started off the year by going to Nigeria and it was amazing. Now, how many people are going to do that? I don't know. What is it that you need to do that would be amazing? And maybe it's going somewhere, maybe it's a hard conversation. Show some courage. That's my challenge to you. Find a place where you can be courageous today and use that as a place to impart the Lord's strength to those that desperately need to hear from you.
Would you say a short prayer for all of us listening?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So Lord, I just thank you that as men, it's hard stuff that we're doing. This is really hard work. And it's so much harder when there's not a point of reference. And I read somewhere that the average guy has one or two close friends. And boy, we want to be available to you to impart encouragement and challenge and the strength of God to our children, to begin with our wives, certainly, but beyond that to our communities and churches and to the world where there are so many widows and orphans and they are in distress and they need us. And places like Afghanistan, where today they're under the threat of death. Places like Haiti, where many have died and don't have a home anymore. Lord, there's a big wide world just crying out in pain for Jesus. Let us begin at home, but let us live missionally, recognizing that we're in partnership with you. And you have said, go into all the world and make disciples. I bless each person here. I pray that the blessing of God is deep within their own heart and they are able to impart it to those closest to them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much for joining us for episode 198 of Dad Awesome with Seth Barnes. The conversation notes, all the links to those blog posts, his books, information on doing the world race and adventures and missions and the other things they're up to. That's all going to be at dadawesome.org/198. Also, in the show notes, whatever app you're listening on, there's going to be information on the episode 200 party on November 9th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I'll also link in the show notes, I mentioned a bunch of cities earlier, the Zog family hitting the road. I'll link a form if anyone's interested in any of these meetups in various cities. You can just kind of fill that out and we'll keep you in the loop as we're dialing in our dates and when we're traveling. And some of you guys are like, man, episode 200, I want to make a gift to this ministry. We're a nonprofit. We partner with a venture as a nonprofit, and whether it's $20, $200, $2,000, if you want to give to the mission of Dad Awesome as we expand this vision, mission, this call that God has to help with adding life to the dad life, you can make a tax-deductible donation to the ministry, and episode 200 might be a good reason for that. Also, episode 200, maybe you're like, now's the time to subscribe, to rank, and review the podcast or the YouTube channel. That helps us reach more dads, so another way you guys can kind of help the ministry go further. Guys, thanks for tuning in this week. Thank you for being dads who are adding intentionality, adding love, adding focus to this gift of a role that we get to be dads. So let's go add some life to the dad life this week.